do you have anybody missing from your team tonight?
I will, Heather and Jill.
And we have a time constraint for one of our members. We have
Two members?
Kevin has a hard stop at 7 with the president's meeting, and Mario has a time constraint for 4:30.
Okay. Ron?
Good afternoon, everyone. We have, first I want to start by introducing, we have a new member
Okay.
on the management side. So Kevin TALC is no longer on the team. You are all aware, he last week with the district was next week, so he decided to go into the position. And so Sarah Cox is the executive director and business services. So he's taking his place.
Welcome, Sarah.
Permanent replacement.
Okay. Any?
That's all I want to say, welcome.
Any time
So then we
constraint?
don't have anybody else absent, and
Okay.
Carl has a time constraint just for about a half hour at 5:45 or so. So he's got to leave for a little bit, then we'll be back.
Okay.
I have one too, sorry. I
That's
should have
okay.
told you when I came in.
That's all right,
6:15.
6:15 for morning.
Okay.
Kevin
Kevin?
Daly.
This is, whoa, that's really loud. It's grade reporting time soon, and so many schools are telling their staff that grades have to be reported on the 14th, when in reality it's the 24th. So can we get a commitment from the district to, once again, reiterate to administration that grades are due on the day they're due, not on the day the administration wants them due, by 6 o'clock, please and thank you.
Okay.
I'm happy to contact any principals who are making that request, but I don't know if it's pervasive enough to send something out to everyone.
Well, we do have labor management as well, so if you have some idea of what, when, where, and why, we'll be at it. All right, Wednesday, I'm sorry, not
Wednesday. Okay. End of work.
I believe Focus says 6 on the 24th. I don't put stuff into Focus, so.
I think we can get that credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's 3 on the 24th or 6 on the 24th, I just want whatever's in Focus to be honored.
Focus says 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
We'll get, okay.
Focus on it.
Hayden's giving me a thumbs up.
I don't know what I gave a thumbs up to, but I'm giving it. I'll talk with you afterwards.
All right, well,
And this will sound kind of,
Do the mic.
I just want to make sure that I'm on the rule follower. I just want to make sure because of the APs when they check that and so forth. I just want to make sure that 3 o'clock, I mean, that's what we have at the end of the 24th. If it's 6, it's 6, but it's something, I don't know whether that was chosen for an arbitrary reason or not.
That's a your side of the table issue, because again, I don't control Focus, so if 3 o'clock works best for y'all, the 6, check by 6, then just make it 3, but don't, yeah, but that's
It's the 24th.
Yeah, the 24th, yeah, but that's a,
Specific time.
before daylight savings, some whatever.
Say what you specific.
yeah, he did. All right, I think that's something you can probably finish off in labor management
Yeah.
on Wednesday. With today, the minutes from last week, everybody get a chance to review. Personally, I like the way Amy set it up with everything all together. The snapshot and the options and what we agreed to. So does anybody have any corrections or deletions to those minutes from last week? I don't see any hands, so with that, next, can we all accept the minutes? Excellent. All right, for this week's agenda, I understand we're doing starting with Article 12. And our first order of business on Article 12 is, yeah,
You want to go through the changes, the contract changes?
okay.
So I forgot what they were last week. We went through,
It was all Article 7. One was
7,
30-minute lunch and
you go into the contract, this is what I put, and of course, somebody else is putting up this language. We added the, should legislation change that impacts instructional minutes, then both parties agree to enter into negotiations. And it's 25 minutes to 30 minutes. And then the other one was.
Yep. Take a quick look at that language and see if that captures what we agreed to. As Amy said, the language may need cleanup before it's put out for ratification, but
Do you want to remove the, so before, school week shall consist of at least one district in-service day and at least 4 preschool days during, just take out the word for, during the preschool days, teachers should have at least 12 hours.
There is.
okay. Anything else?
Oh,
All right, I don't think we did any other language last week other than when we all agreed to the changes in, for compliance issues with state statutes. So with that, now Article 12, ready to move on?
Sure.
Article 12, and our first issue in Article 12 is bereavement leave, or is it
We're actually going to start with association.
association
So,
leave?
kind of
Okay,
lead off the discussion tonight, so we're going to start with Article 12.0.
Wait,
12.04.
145.
5A. So the current language basically just says, you know, that the association duty, absence is due to union business. It gives some examples of bargaining-related committees, ratification, voting, election of building representatives, and association officers. Association duty must be requested by the association, and the district will provide the association with an invoice. And so the association pays for any of the substitutes that would be on leave during that time. So we had a conversation before about, and I know the association had expressed that they try to make sure that we limit the amount of people that are absent, especially when it comes to multiple people in the same building. And so this time around, I think we had a couple buildings that may have had 2 or even 3 teachers that will be leaving in March. And so, you know, when I polled the principals, they thought that, you know, that could be an issue if that's the case. So is there something we can talk about? Maybe just need further clarification. Go ahead, Kevin.
So today, as far as I know, I have 2 people who are up there. They're not at the same school. Next week is spring break. If anybody goes up on spring break, I want to talk to them, but certainly the district wouldn't care about that. The week after that, I'm up there, and Charla joins me on Wednesday. And the week of the 31st, I believe there are 2 people from the same school. So the fact that 3, I never send more than 2, because if FEA likes to spread the wealth, and I like to say if everybody sends 2, that's 200 and some people up there a week. So I only send 2. So I'm not sure, and I don't want to say something really bad, which is I think we're solving a problem that doesn't exist because I use association leave to send 2 people a week to Tallahassee for maybe 4 weeks, so that's 8 total people. I sometimes use association leave if somebody's on an FEA committee. Charlotte's on the FEA. She's the chair of the Goals and Budget Committee, so sometimes I send her. And I do also want to point out what a great job Kelly Services is doing in finding subs at over 85%. And the district has been 200 people short for about 5 years now. And that doesn't seem to bother anybody. But when I want to send 2 people from the same school, that is 2.5 weeks from now. And expect the employees to work with their administration to find their subs proactively. And told the district at the January labor management meeting that I was sending people to Tallahassee, please tell your principals. And may even have reiterated in February, I'm not sure, and I'm more than happy to talk about process, and process this time may not have been as tight as it was last time, but like I said, I have 2 people this week going from separate schools, and I haven't, no one from those schools has bothered me with a letter that will be coming probably tomorrow. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk about process, but in the grand scheme of things, it's 8 people over 60 days between in session and probably 5 or 6 days throughout the rest of the school year for other people. So I'm not sure.
Kevin, you said 2 from separate schools next week?
Next week is spring break, so I don't think anybody cares where they're coming from.
This week is 2.
This week it's 2 from separate.
Okay.
Next week it's spring break, and maybe somebody wants to see Tallahassee in spring break. And it's me and Charlotte the next week. She leaves on Wednesday, and then after that, I believe it's the instance of the 2 people from the same school. But again, that broke last week, so that gives you this week, next week, and the week after to find subs. And Kelly Services is at 80-some%. So, you know, it kind of is what it
I
is.
don't want you to assume bad intentions today as far as why the district is bringing this to the table, because we just want clarification on what the association standpoint is on how this language is supposed to be implemented. So when we bring it in to say, hey, we're trying to solve this issue so we don't run into any issues, you know, in the future, we're just asking what the interpretation is. I'm not making any proposals. I'm not asking you to change what's in the language here. I just wanted, what you just said was, how do you go about determining that? And then from then, I'm assuming that those teachers have to enter that into PeopleSoft. And then it goes through the approval process at that point, just like any other big thing.
I don't think teachers can enter association leave. I think that has to be done by either
Yes.
they can, then we need to stop the opportunity for people to put association leave in, because I need to know when I'm paying for people that I'm in town. So there you go.
That's why I wanted to bring the issue up to the table.
I thought we had stopped that process, but I guess we hadn't.
It is not clear on how this process works. And so my hope tonight is we can have a conversation about how we make it clearer to all of our folks.
Okay. Shay?
So,
I never.
no, you never can.
It's
I'm blind.
So just to, that was really loud. To give you an idea, most of the people that are going up during this particular session are coming from our teacher leader program. The way that we, I open it up to them, they go on to Working Family Lobby Corps and they can sign up. And then from there, I tell them you need to have a talk with your principal and make sure that your principal is okay with this. Once I know your principal is okay, Kevin will send a letter requesting association leave. I ask them to do it as early as possible because there again, we do need to have subs. We need, we don't need instruction time interrupted in any way. I do have principals that said no, and I know Kevin probably doesn't know this, but I have 3 people going up on spring break because they still wanted the opportunity, but their principals actually did tell them no.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. So what I heard was we would encourage our employees to go to their principal, make sure that there's nothing planned that week, and we try to limit the amount of teachers that go from any one building but they do go through the approval process, just like any other leave.
Anna?
All right, I just wanted to say, I just looked up in like the leave management system, and I do not see association
I didn't think
leave
we could do it.
as an option, so.
She needs a people song. You're looking at LMS.
Yeah, LMS.
People thought.
People sometimes, yeah, people sometimes, yeah.
I didn't put absence in people thought.
No, but yours, the principal secretary.
Yeah, all of these people thought, but I don't know how to do that right now.
Okay. Any other discussion on this issue?
No, and I think the minutes will reflect the conversation, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, next on the list, I know we're talking about a number of different leaves. Bereavement leave? Or
Can't remember which one's next on our list.
parental leave was another one, or
Shared sick time.
shared sick time? Pick your poison. Her?
So it looks like, wow, that is loud. Looks like they are all grouped in 1202, section 5. So shall we go one by one, or do you want to, okay. So how about bereavement leave?
Okay,
So we've had discussion at this table for a couple of years about allowing employees the opportunity to take bereavement leave that's not specifically tied to their accrued leave. Currently, an employee can take bereavement leave, and if I could spell it correctly, I would be able to go to my contract at the same time I'm talking. Thank you, I left the A out. Bereavement leave can be used, they can use their sick leave in place of, bereavement leave due to a death of a family or household member. There's some data in the shared folder that came from Finn, I believe, that shows a whole host of counties have some sort of bereavement leave for their employees that, like I said, don't come out of their sick leave. For instance, Hendry County, it's district policy that employees get 3 days of bereavement leave, no documentation required. In Polk, they get 2 days, but they have to give some sort of documentation. So we want to start the discussion here about some employer-paid bereavement leave and help make us competitive with, some of the counties around us. As I mentioned, Charlotte, Collier have nothing at this point.
okay, thanks, Kurt. Anybody else? Ron?
Yeah, and again, for those of you that may not have seen it or aren't aware, we did ask FEN to provide us with some data. There were 35 districts, I believe, that responded, and of those 35, 21 of them have bereavement leave that is outside of sick and personal time. Some of them do allow, like we have current in our language, bereavement leave, but it then is actually part of sick and personal. So you could use that as a reason to take sick and personal with that. So, yeah, somewhere around, I think we said about 70% of the districts that we have some type of bereavement leave. I'm just kind of curious, you said you have had some of these discussions. So did you talk about, what that might be as far as cost to the district?
No, he's got the mic.
Oh, that's okay.
I could just, we had discussion here about bereavement leave. We negotiated the ability to use your own sick leave. I don't think we've had discussion about cost. No, that's all I heard.
No, you're better. Okay. I would just say that was the issue when we talked about it. Like, we never priced it out.
Okay,
Can
you agree with Kurt, we never priced it up.
I, so there's gotta be an actuarial table somewhere that says, given our kind of size and stuff, what we think the average usage would be. And I don't have that, but actuarials are everywhere, they do everything. So there's gotta be some actuarial table that somebody can maybe try to look for and will help look to. You know, an organization this size, what are the odds bereavement leave kicks in, how many people do we think? And maybe we could start there and see what happens.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If it's okay with this group, I think that would be our next step in taking a look at whether we look, you know, for those, maybe we go back to those districts that have bereavement leave and say on average, you know, what have you seen, what's the, you know, we can figure out what the mean is across those districts as far as, you know, the percentage of the teachers that use bereavement leave, and then we can kind of, you know, what that looks like, what it costs.
Okay, so you want to table this until a time certain, or just table it until we get the information about costs?
I'm curious, do you have some kind of proposal that we want to specifically take a look at?
So, I mean, I think we have something kind of based on just a pile of all of the policies we have. But it's interesting, and when we first did this research a couple of years ago, the thing I found interesting was the amount of time related to the distance traveled. And that was an interesting concept to me. A lot of the districts I think we're looking at just say 3 days, 5 days, whatever. But, you know, it's one of those interesting concepts where if somebody dies, you know, because we have a lot of people, right? We recruit heavily out of the Midwest and have a lot of young people here who have families and things back in the Midwest, and so for that attitude with me, that was an interesting concept around the idea if you had to travel further for the service, that you got a day or two more. And I saw one where it was really like, it was a miles kind of thing, this many miles got this many miles got this. And so, you know, not to kind of give you guys something to say, but that also kind of works a manageability issue in it as well. But that was something interesting that I saw when we first started looking at it, was the idea of how far you had to travel for the service related to how many days you got. Because honestly, you know, if it's somebody extremely close to you, as most of these things are, there may not be enough days to fully recover. This may just be I need to go somewhere to attend a service and wrap up some financials and do some other things, and I'm never really ready to come back emotionally. So, you know, but yeah, I think Kerr kind of has some conversation ready around like general guidelines and ideas.
No, he really said everything that there is to say. I would say we were looking, Orange does 3 days in state, 5 days out of state.
Brevard was an outlier,
5 days regardless. But you did have to provide some sort of obituary. I think in order to be competitive,
we have to
at least, we'd like to at least look at 3 days.
Okay, Ron?
We had another mic last time.
Yeah.
Not in charge.
There's some conversation today too, again, just about the management of that, so that would be, you know, probably, I would imagine that the immediate supervisor definitely would have to just collect that, whatever verification that we needed, if we were to decide that that was going to be the language, and then would have to go through that approval process. Yeah, I agree.
Ron? Rob?
So, you can start with the number of days, that's fine, it looks
Like
like
where we're headed, but I think it's most important to
define who's eligible for it.
So
When a person dies, how far down
the family,
do we go to make someone eligible? Currently,
it's father, mother, brother, sister, husband, wife, child, and then the catch-all or another close relative. So
I'm not sure, we need to be more specific than that,
to come up
with who would have to pass and how are they related to you
to be eligible. So the days are important, but I think it's most important
to figure out.
That's where the devil's in the details, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Carl? Want to pass the mic to Carl, please? Thank you.
Who would trigger eligibility?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
All right, Carl?
And I think along those same lines, we have to define what quote unquote evidence or documentation, because in this day and age, it's not always a service or something like that.
Or an obituary.
Or obituary even, you know, and so it doesn't mean that, but however, a lot of times there's so much involvement, it's overwhelming to get rid of take care of all of the paperwork and the things that have to be done associated with it. So I think that, those are certain aspects. I don't know what they all would necessarily be, but I think, it can't necessarily always be in the traditional sense of what we used to think of it as. Yeah, so.
Anna?
Thinking along those same lines, maybe even thinking of a timeline for submitting that documentation. You know, I can just kind of imagine someone going through the grief of someone very close to them and then have to also worry about, okay, where's this paper, I need to submit it. You know, maybe if there was like 30 days or something, just some sort of timeline that they needed to submit that. So we could always, give or take time.
Okay. We're digging into options here, but her?
So when it comes to eligibility and who's family and who's not, the language gets very interesting. So in Brevard, I'm not going to name everybody because it's exhaustive, but it's spouse, siblings, parents, grandparents. Then it starts going into in-laws, step-parents, step-children, or a person residing in the same household as the employee. I like that language because it's as generous, I think, as any of the others. Hendry County uses the definition as defined by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, and they claim it's the death of any relative. I would not, yeah.
Go ahead.
But, so the OPM, their website still works. It does have a list of who is, a family member, immediate relative, parent, son, daughter, like that, but it's still rather, it's an all-inclusive list.
Okay. Ron, did I see you ready to say something? No?
No, actually, I'm just looking at, this survey was sent out by Penn.
All right, Carl, you want to talk while he's looking?
Just real quick, and I don't know, when those days, are they talking about within a year or each incident?
That's a good question too. Some of the contracts don't speak to it, so I believe that it would be per incident. I don't know that I saw one that limited to one instance of bereavement leave per contractual year, for example.
Okay, and that because listening to some of those wrong things, I think it's something that we need to go forward with caution. As not to say that, and like we talked about, like for instance, when I was growing up, there was in the same house, my first cousin, my aunt, and grandma. And so I knew that could happen, but I think it's something we have to really just be thoughtful of as we go forward and think about all of those aspects that need to be considered. We're not really, I don't think, doing anything today, but I think we definitely need to kind of start thinking about how to start with a certain level and then perhaps expand as things progress.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
I agree with that too, as we get to looking at these other types of leaves, and I think he brought up accruability, is it part of terminal pay? I think all of these things, the more clearly we define it now, the less likely we are to get in a situation where an employee leaves the district and says, oh, but I didn't use my bereavement day, that's 5 more days, you've got to pay me upon separation. So I think you're right, and again, we're not ready to really discuss anything tonight, and I always like to say I like to do one thing really well as opposed to 3 things kind of half-baked. And so if we can figure out the people that are eligible, it probably is the same people, the same kind of range of people that are eligible for the other ones, right? And figure out the days and figure out how many times and figure out, is it accruable and is it paid on terminal pay? Answer all these questions for all of them at once. I think we have the best chance to write great language that nobody around this table needs to say, well, 10 years ago, this is what they meant to say, and they just didn't. So, yeah, I think it'll be better for us to take a minute and really construct this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So marching orders moving forward, we want to get an idea of what 3 days, we'll base that off of that, what 3 days, what per day cost. 3 days and what that might cost, and then we want to look at, who would then, do you guys want to take a look at, you know, that kind of list of who might be eligible and bring that back next time?
Yeah, sure. We can brainstorm that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Carl, when we look at the frequency of that, maybe within a year, you know, it so happened, you know, unfortunately, had 2 parents pass away, and we wouldn't want to restrict that. If you had a parent pass away, it was 3 days, and your second cousin on your mom's side passed away, then maybe we would consider limiting that at that point. Right. Incident cost? So we're gonna look at it as a incident cost, because that will probably be more than. Okay.
Okay, all right, I think we came up with a lot of good thoughts during this discussion to delve deeper into, so I guess that's your assignment, delve deeper. And do we want to bring this back at a time certain, or just play it by ear? Ron?
I'm fine with looking at the 24th, you know, when we come back the next time to have that prepared, and we open that.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay? All right, we'll do it on the 24th. Thank you. Next week, we had shared sick leave, I think was one of them.
Parental as well? May I start with parental?
Oh, sure.
So this is kind of in the same vein, and maybe just a starting point for a conversation. I put 2 MOUs in the shared drive. One is from January 14th, Leon County School District. The other is January 27th, both in this year, where they're really setting this a standard, I guess, with a new type of leave that we don't typically see in Florida public schools. We've spoken about maternity leave here at this table in years past, and this is Kurt's personal opinion. It's an injustice that you have to use family medical leave, for that. But that's the vehicle that we have to use, for maternity leave. But in addition to that, the law allows you to supplant your personal leave or your sick leave so you can be paid, through, while you're on FMLA. But in Leon County, the union and the district entered into an MOU that would provide up to 5 days of paid leave to teachers who experience the birth of a child or placement of a child for an adoption. And it's not just maternity leave, it's paid parental leave. And under this MOU, there's some stipulations how long you have to work for the employer before that. But you can use it within a period of 6 weeks following the birth or placement for adoption. In a similar vein, you'll see one from Orange, where they did not negotiate just 5 days, they negotiated 15 days, 3 consecutive weeks of paid leave beginning on the first duty day after the birth of the child. And I like that they go even further, that if somebody requests maternity leave, their supervisor sends them information on the Pump Act, so that there's no questions about what happens, in terms of procedure when the new mother returns to campus. And so the Orange restricts it to just maternity leave, but Leon opens it up to paid parental leave.
Okay, thank you for the information. Anybody have anything on that point? Ron?
So again, I would ask, is there one of those that, you favor over the other, or is there something you particularly are looking at?
I think for me personally, and maybe for all of us, right, it's the most expansive one, so it's just parental leave. Again, I think we're gonna run into the same problems we talked about, right? And again, maternity leave once every 9 months. So, maybe if you have a baby right at the beginning of, August, there may be an opportunity for a second one right at the end of May. But generally, this is a once per contract year kind of situation, right? And so, but a lot of those same questions we brought up here, again, maybe there's an actuary table that tells us how many times a pregnancy and birth occur within this kind of population of people. And, I think costing it out again and figuring it out and figuring out how many days, but again, by answering the common questions we've got for the other leave, it will lead us in this discussion as well. But for the most expansive, I think one of them only did maternity leave at first, right? That was Leon? Leon is parental. Orange only did maternity leave at first, and I think they left the option open to come back at a later date to expand it to the broader kind of paternal leave.
This is off memory, because they actually presented at the FDN, the last FDN meeting I went to, and it was, I believe there's a specific, so it's obviously only for the mother, for the maternity, and it's only in cases of actual birth. They don't grant it for adoption. And then it actually starts, those 3 weeks start the very next day of service. So if the mother had a baby in July, then they have 3 weeks from the start of school. That parental maternity. They call it parental leave, but it's really maternity for them. Based on that. And that doesn't sound like what you're interested in. You're more interested in what Leon. Okay.
Kevin?
I'm just trying to get an idea. Cost this out.
Yeah, kind of, right? But again, I like the idea of including adoptive parents because there is kind of a period of, kind of getting used to each other or whatever you want to call it. A better word escapes me. But there is also that idea that, you now have a child you didn't have before and you've got to set things up. So I'm going to give the mic to Tina somebody.
Great, Tina?
Coming from the position that I have an adopted daughter, I adopted her when I worked for a different district in Georgia who gave me a lot of struggle to get leave. And that is just as important, if not more important, than somebody who physically has the baby, because I did not carry this child for 9 months. I need 6 to 9 weeks to be able to bond with that baby. So I'm going to push for adoption as well.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tina. Appreciate that. Kirsten?
Want to pass the mic to here?
From a boring HR perspective, I just want to share that parental leave and FMLA are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Parental leave would be included as part of FMLA and the protected leave. FMLA provides protected leave, meaning the employer can't refuse it, they can't hold it against the employee for taking that leave. The only different thing is FMLA is not. So parental leave is typically concurrent with FMLA leave, but it's just providing for being paid rather than unpaid and using your benefits. So FMLA can go up to 12 weeks, and that's usually on a rolling, boring formula. So what this would say is that, 3 weeks of that would be paid by the district for adoption or birth appropriate, but you're still allowed up to 12 weeks. If that is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, it sounds, Kurt?
Real quickly, just the same with bereavement leave. We believe this will help make us even more competitive. Because when we were looking through other contracts across the state, I didn't see a whole host of them that had any type of paid leave related to adoption, placement, birth, just your own sick leave or your own personal leave.
Okay, thank you. Ron? Oh, Rob?
Yes. I actually have a question for TALC.
Okay. We allow questions.
Just a question, if FEA is lobbying the state on this issue? Just curious.
Not current. No, really? Okay.
All right.
Okay? Ron? All right. It sounds like yes, did I hear so?
No, I just wanted to say again, so marching orders are the district will take a look at some percentage and we'll share that with you if we can. I don't know that we're gonna be able to gather a lot of data from the other districts because it's a very new concept, but we'll try to put together sometime and share you what criteria we use and how we came to some determination for that cost. And then you guys can kind of take a look more in depth at what you really like to see in that line. But the most expansive sounds like, you know, we want to look at adoption, parental, not maternity, you know, and maybe look at the time frame within that, with all those programs. Go ahead,
Kevin?
I think for me, when we look at these, in my mind, that the real unknown is frequency. I mean, we can pretty much figure out what it costs, right? Like, we all cost the district something, and so if we went on average, we could figure that out, 3 days times whatever the daily rate of pay is, gets us what we used to call Bonnie math, which is kind of in the ballpark. And I think for me, it's just frequency, and Shay was just asking if we're able to request from other districts FMLA data related to this, or is that HIPAA, FERPA, whatever?
You just want numbers?
Yeah, like could we call Collier and say, how many times do you think, or how many times has somebody taken FMLA and given, you know, the birth of a child or the adoption of a child is, yeah, so again, for me, it's frequency that I think is the big unknown here, because like I said, we all, like average cost is what it is.
Kirsten?
We should be able to pull actual data out of PeopleSoft for the past 5 years, you know, how many employees have, you know, taken FMLA due to the birth of a child.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Any other thoughts? No? So it sounds like we're going to hold off on this one as well. Time certain, or just when data can be gathered? We already have one for the 24th. Is this doable on the 24th as well?
I know Jessie, our HRIS person, is also working on PeopleSoft system updates, so it might be challenging for her to be able to pull the data out by then. We can ask.
Okay. Ron?
Okay, yeah, we can kind of focus on the leave, and I think we can collect that, but Kurt, I'll keep you up to speed with where we're at in the collection of that data, and we will put the next part of the session. That'll be our goal, to get that done, but we're running I know PeopleSoft's gonna be down for a week too, during spring break, so that may be all kind of issues.
Yeah. Okay. Kurt?
The other thing that we had in this section related to exploring voluntary donation shared sick leave, because the current contract restricts it to, oh wow, I just lost my words. Family members, thank you. I'm reading my proposal here. So the current contract restricts it to family members only. And in the shared folder, I populated 2 separate items. One is from the City of Cape Coral, one is from the Florida Education Association, and I populated the actual sick leave statute in there. So we wanted to have some conversation around what it would look like for employees that have the ability to make a request and donate their own sick leave to someone else, because we don't have the ability to bank those with the closing of the sick leave bank.
Okay. Need a minute to look at what Kurt just mentioned from City of Cape Coral.
If I may, I can just kind of give like a really brief overview of what we're looking at. So basically, it breaks down into a couple of steps. if an employee has exhausted their sick leave, we would like some sort of process where, say I'm experiencing a critical illness or an accident or something. We're not talking about something that would have gotten the sick leave bank into trouble in years past. This is a verified illness, a verified accident, or an injury to themselves or immediate family member. I would make a request to HR. HR would then send that anonymous request out to everybody in the bargaining unit and say, hey, one of your colleagues is asking is requesting donation of leave. Is anyone interested? And then folks that are interested can donate leave. We can talk about what the increments look like and what the process looks like, but I think the only other piece that's common in these policies is if the donated leave isn't used at some point, sometime certain, that donated leave is given back to the person that donated it in the first place. I think that's kind of a high level overview of what we're looking for.
Okay, Rob?
Over here, I got it. Is the other mic over here?
Yeah, that one.
Everybody's using it.
So, you're not talking sick leave, right?
No.
Right, okay. So shared sick leave, I've been here almost 20 years. When I worked in New York State government, right before that, we had this. I don't know of any negatives regarding it, except there were constant emails. Gee, so-and-so had something happen. They won't give the name, of course, an employee. Are you interested in donating? Some of them are horrible stories, some of them were, make you feel like, gosh, if I don't donate a day, I feel horrible. So, there is that. There's also now, 20 years later, a lot of people don't read their email. So, there's that dilemma. So, just pointing out a couple of things when I worked with a previous employer that seemed to be issues.
Okay. Anybody else? Kristen? Okay, Lori. Who has the mic? Rob, do you have it?
Always something that's on the story.
I've been at previous employers who do have voluntary contribution as well, but I do know in the past that in all of those organizations, HR has not been involved in actually submitting the request. They kind of stay out of the asking people to donate it, to not appear. But all they would do is there was a form and the individual was required to find someone who's willing to do it just or send out something on their own or on behalf of someone. And then the form would be submitted to HR who would do the balance transfers, but HR tends to be hesitant to be the person.
Thank you. Anybody else have any input or experience with shared sick leave? Shay?
So I worked for the city of Cape Coral Charter Schools and kind of, I'm sorry, I can't see that far away, so I don't know who's just speaking, but it was kind of the same thing. Our campuses were very close, so everyone knew everyone. And we did have a woman who became ill and was going to be out for a long period of time. And we kind of just heard it through word of mouth. And there was a form that we could go fill out with our principal secretary if we wanted to donate time. And then that was sent in. It worked really well. And actually, she didn't even end up using everyone's time. And there was a stipulation in our contract, which is probably still in there, that if they don't use all that time is given back to the people who donated in a chronological order.
Okay. Thank you. So HR was kept out of that one too. Anna? Rob, can you pass Anna the mic, please? Oh, no, they're passing a mic. You have a shorter distance.
So just looking at the guidelines that are in the state statute, obviously they would need to provide documentation by the treating physician for illness, accident, injury, and then establish a minimum number of sick days needed. Require that any unused time is then transferred back to that employee. And then, this last one, establish a minimum number of sick leave days that, like, if I was giving time away, that I would have to retain. So let's say that I would have to have a minimum of 10 days. I think also, looking at our current language for family, it does say in here no more than 20 days of shared sick leave at a time. And then kind of thinking about like district-wide, like say there was the email that went out and I was like, sure, I'll donate a day. I want to consider the manageability of that. Like, how would you know if this person received 20 days and they used 5 of them? How would you know who those other days, who they belong to and who they went back to? So that's just something I think we need to consider as well.
So a manageability issue. Kerr?
I was always told, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to, so I'm terrified to ask this question. One would think that PeopleSoft would be able to do all this,
And I'm just curious, is PeopleSoft built
with an internal module that can already handle shared sick leave?
Your first sentence, one would think.
Because I remember in the past that PeopleSoft was
taken out of the box and then completely customized for, for the district's use? So I'm curious.
There's also like double balance. Correct. I don't know that we have the capability today. But that doesn't mean we can't make a request to see what that would take in PeopleSoft. And that's been a continual kind of process for, we put health tickets in to see what it would take for us to be able to do that. Question, so I don't even know what the actual name of this process would be. We have sick leave pool, we have shared sick leave, we have sick leave banks. I think we had a bank at one point.
I think we did.
And so we're not interested in going back to the bank.
No, because with the bank, it went into the negative rather quickly.
Days weren't taken on a consistent basis, and I guess when the alarm was raised, it was well underwater at that point. I think with the shared sick leave, and I'm being very specific, not using pool, it's just a transactional basis where someone makes a request, more than one person can donate. The reason why I mentioned HR, I was looking at the language that I fall under. We're less than 80 people. It's small.
It would be a much larger lift here. I don't know that another committee that would be charged in sending out these would also be the answer. That I'm worried that would add another layer to it. I don't know what the perfect answer is, how you get this information out to everyone as quickly as possible. Some of the language says before the end of the pay period. I'm curious how we'd be able to accomplish that.
Okay. Hannah?
So I guess when I think of kind of the difference between shared sick leave and the sick leave pool, I know plenty of situations where someone I knew, whether they were at my school site or just someone I know that now is at a different school site, where something has happened. And we have said, coworkers amongst ourselves, man, I wish I could give them some of my time. I know that they've had this thing happen to them, so it is very personal, because you have that person that you're like, I would give them all my time if I could. And so I think, kind of like Shay said, with being where she was at with a smaller site, everyone knew anyone, you kind of heard through word of mouth. That's kind of where my mind goes when we talk about manageability. We are a very large district. I would, in my mind, this makes sense of something has happened at my school site. I have a personal connection, man, I wanna help them, or even a friend of mine. But then if it was something like, maybe you're at a school site and no one wanted or had the time available to give you the time, that then it would be kind of, you know, like another phase of it, then kind of going a little bit out further for a leash of trying to get time. Versus the sick leave pool, anyone at any time could just take time from it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Shay?
Just out of curiosity, how do we do the shared sick leave with family members right now? And how would that be different, maybe?
I have one that's doing it now before.
Amy?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the process really right now with a family member is just a request, directly to either HR or payroll, I don't remember which one, to a request to basically be able to donate your time, and then you prove how this person is of relation to you as is allowed in the contract, and then you're able to just directly donate that time to them. It's a much smaller scale transaction. I use it myself. My dad donated time to me, and I had a baby. So it's just a very smaller scale transaction because it's just directly one-on-one with the person that you're related to and being able to just transfer the time over. Different situation when you're talking about something that's more at a larger scale with everyone who can just donate to anybody and everybody. There definitely would have to be a much larger machine behind that in order to manage it. I guess my question would be, or just some thought process. So yes, you had a sick leave bank before, and for various reasons, it wasn't successful. And at some point, we determined that we would shut it down. However, that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a viable option in the future. Obviously, we would just need to figure out like better mechanisms in order, to manage it. If we're talking about at this point, basically wanting people to be able to access shared leave, it could be that a sick leave bank might be a way that we want to consider in order to accomplish that, because anybody who opts into the sick leave bank, I've opted in, so therefore I've already expressed my desire to want to share sick leave, and also my desire to be able to tap into it should I need it at a future date. So that eliminates all the need to be blasting people with a notification or email every time something happens to somebody in an organization this large, and you can imagine it's probably quite often. Therefore, under a bank, people have already declared what their desire and what their, option is. And it might mitigate, an unintended consequence of people feeling pressure to do something that maybe they don't want to or can't do. So just something to consider.
Kevin?
And I think Amy hit on some of the things I was going to talk about. I have an interest in the anonymity of it all, because you're right, Amy. People may feel pressured to donate days when they otherwise wouldn't, for whatever reason, right? They would feel pressure, and if it came from HR in the district, there'd be like district level pressure. If it came from your administrator, there'd be administrator level pressure. Even if it came from somebody on campus who had some kind of, cachet with the rest of the staff, it carries some pressure. So for me, the anonymity part of it is really important. And maybe, unfortunately, as much as I'm not sure I even want to reopen that can, the sick leave bank is the best way to do it anonymously. And you're right, Amy, people have opted in. The problems as I remember, and again, I think it was closed under my watch, but it wasn't put in a situation under my watch. When days were owed to take from people they weren't necessarily taken, and then on the converse side, there were things that may not have qualified as a reason to take sick leave from the sick leave bank, people were granted. And so I think, Spock still has one, and they did it by restricting the amount of days. So I think if we were to entertain reopening, I would want to do limited number of days, a real, strict adherence to when we need a day, we're taking a day. And the idea that this really is for kind of catastrophic things, not, I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, because there is no run-of-the-mill medical emergency, but this is really for catastrophic issues that are going to keep you out for an extended period of time. And I don't know if we even want to entertain the dollar value of my sick time versus the dollar value of a new employee's sick time. I don't think we were good. I'm glad we don't want to entertain that, but I wanted to put it out there because my sick time is worth a little bit more than a new employee's, and so I don't want to get in the kind of dollar for dollar idea. And so that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, Kirsten, you have the mic, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that the points that you bring up are important in managing a successful sick leave bank, which is strictly adhering to the covered illnesses and injuries, whatever time limit. But I know at FGCU, where I came from, we had a very successful and well-funded sick leave bank that would pay up to 1 year of bench wages for employees. We had a lot of money, but you're not gonna like how it was funded. It was funded by employees at FGCU. We did not receive any more sick leave pay at termination. We had our vacation leave, but no sick leave pay. And they're all, any unused sick leave when an employee left went into that bank.
You're running over.
That's a good bank to
No wonder it's so rich. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of throwing this out there because, we do have some of our other employees in the district have this concept in place. And so is that a consideration to take a look at, what we have for some of our other employees, or you want to go specifically in another direction?
I mean, I think if we're looking to model what some of the other employee groups have, we definitely want to stay uniform, right? I mean, we'd like for all of the agreements or, I won't say non-agreements, but terms and conditions of employment for schedule and administrators, we want, I think, some uniformity there. So again, if the direction we inevitably end up going in, because there is no bad idea, there's just talking about it until the bad ideas weed themselves out and you're left with whatever's left over. So through this discussion, the best idea is the sick leave bank. Then I think we really need to tighten it up and make people really aware of what it's for and how many days and then give people an opportunity to join in.
I've had quite a bit of experience with sick leave banks myself. And I was going to put this out and I just read the other association that has sick leave. They do have a committee that reviews this on a regular basis. So that would become part of, our labor management, and we would look at, what current requests we have, reevaluate whatever criteria we have. I really think it's got to be a collaboration to make sure that we're on point with how we are measuring the program.
We had that committee, but I think our overwhelming love for our fellow mankind may have overridden our adherence to the guidelines. It's probably the best way I would describe it.
And Ron, you're familiar not because you've been sick a lot, because you were
Quite honestly, in my years as a district leader, in the district, we tried to implement that, but it failed, just like we did here. But I think the most success we had was that we actually had a committee that reviewed and decided, and we had a formal process to go through to be able to award. And we had a bank though, in most of my cases, where, at the beginning of the year, you could take whatever, percentage of your sick leave that you had accrued up to that point and put it in the bank. And then the request would come and be verified through the committee as far as how many days, the committee basically was doing the task of determining how many days to award that. But we had specific grounding too, so it was trying to take the subjectivity out of it as much as possible. The more effort you put into the design criteria and all those things, probably the less you're going to see those issues.
And just to step out of the box a little bit, when I came in 1986, we did have a sick leave bank that people could get 120 days. There was a committee, it lasted for a whole lot of years. I was on that committee and with the HR director and one other person to grant people so many days. And each year you had to have a certain amount of accumulated days to join the sick leave bank. And only those who were part of the sick leave bank and donated days could take days from the sick leave bank. So if you decided, I don't want to donate any days, that's your decision. And if you have a catastrophic illness, then you don't get the sick leave bank. That's the way it operated for many, many years. So it was like many of you have already discussed when I started here.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, anything else? Well, it sounds like we're not making any decisions tonight on sick leave bank. Good discussion. Actually, we started out with shared sick leave and ended up with sick leave bank conversation, so. What's next on the agenda? Any more leave discussion? No? What's next? Kevin?
Do we want to talk about a maintenance issue around the difference between board policy on discipline and what's in the contract? Oh, you don't have that today? Okay, sorry. I put him on the spot. Okay, I just know that board policy on discipline is much better than what we have in the contract and much more precise.
I asked Ron exactly what you guys were talking about, so or just, not right now.
I've got the policy number, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
I want the policy number. The policy number is 3139.01.
Got it.
Just
Several
interesting.
policies that deal with discipline, so.
Yeah, I think the line is progressive discipline process with a graduated range of structured corrective actions to address poor performance or unacceptable behavior in the workplace. A lot of words.
It's much better than, yeah, which is, progressive.
All right, so not ready for that one tonight. Anything else? It's only just after 5.
I just saw that myself.
Might be the best hour of discussion we've had in years.
I don't know that I have anything else for tonight.
Ron, do you have anything?
Based on what we, we're going to talk about what issues. I know, just so you know, we've had conversations about the terminal pay issue. Rob and I have had conversations about that too, and I would feel comfortable with getting more meat conclusions, kind of research on, what is actually in statute and what we found strictly language. We just want to make sure we're clear.
So if I could,
Sure.
I just want to tell Kurt this, so you could possibly run this by your counsel, whoever's giving you advice.
This is around
The terminal pay, yeah, so there is a statute that refers to 10 years in FRS, and I'll give you that number, it's 110.122, parens 1. And I believe that is where this language in our Neola policy, and somehow it made it into the TALC contract, is coming from. So the question is, a legitimate question, which I haven't answered yet, is does that statute apply to school districts? Because it clearly applies to state agencies, local governments, departments. Not sure if it applies, and believe it or not, I've asked my colleagues statewide, and I've heard crickets. And I sense that's because several of them probably looked it up and said, oh, shoot.
Yeah, the only idiots that are doing this, that I've been able.
Well,
for a school district, I mean.
yeah, so there is a case out of, I don't want to misquote myself, but that addressed the statute, but not directly, Bay County.
Okay.
Where an administrative law judge said, and that case was about whether the person could use credit from a state agency and the district to equal the 10 years, and the court said yes. So Bay County had it in their policy at one point, or in their CBA, yeah, 110.122.
110.122.
Correct. And it's paragraph 1 of that statute. So that language didn't just come out of thin air. It came from somewhere. The question is it applicable to us? So that's where I'm at.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Kevin?
Yeah. I'm assuming we're wrapping up, so
I guess so.
I want to let everyone know, unfortunately, I will not be here at the next bargaining session. I will be in Tallahassee speaking to lawmakers. Please go on without me. As they say in the war movies, my professional negotiator and my team are far better than I am.
Thank you for the heads up, Kevin.
So we expect a call from the Tallahassee jail.
I know better.
We'll start collecting bail soon.
I know better.
All right.
It's definitely not on our side, so I don't know.
Anna?
So I was just looking at like the notes and when we are highlighting it are in orange. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't read what's highlighted. Yeah.
Where,
So specifically,
So like
I think it was like under like the lunch. Like I can read that one, but I can't read.
Can we just change the color of the orange?
well, I think this is for, like, I have it.
But I don't have editing access.
So we're changing the backside.
Like right there.
So this is stuff that we've already, this is like old stuff. So it is lack on the new stuff, but I can scribble it rather than highlight it, that's fine.
Or just change the
I
color of the orange?
Because some of them, if you go down like a little further, some of them, I don't know, like the grays and bold, like I can't read that one, but go down just a little bit more.
It doesn't hold it
No, if you just, thank you for that, but if you go down just a little bit more, like I can read that one, not on that screen, but on my computer. I don't know, just something for, because it's kind of as I'm going through our live document, looking back, I'm just struggling to see that one that's orange.
Okay. It's almost like it's gray versus the black text.
That's what that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to filter that.
Okay. Anything else?
But I love this old document that this committee has been
All right, anything else for housekeeping? All right, well,
Very good.
Ron? Okay.
Thank you to Donna and Amy for their work tonight, and appreciate you guys in the room.
good discussions tonight, and enjoy the rest of your week. And for those of you who get spring break next week, rest and relax.
Where am I from? Oh. Where did they come? Oh, did you? I went to go see it. You got a heart. You got a heart.